This lecture will be exploring the domestic division of labor, a key concept in sociology that examines how tasks and responsibilities within the household are divided among family members. This includes who takes on roles such as cooking, cleaning, childcare, and financial management, as well as how these roles are influenced by societal norms and expectations. To understand this concept, it's important to define domestic labor, which refers to all the unpaid work involved in managing a household. This includes routine tasks such as laundry, meal preparation, shopping, and maintaining a clean home, alongside the emotional and physical care provided to family members. Throughout this lecture, we'll investigate how the division of these responsibilities has evolved over time, considering traditional perspectives, changes in gender roles, and ongoing debates about whether true equality has been achieved in family life. Firstly, Talcott Parsons, a functionalist sociologist, provided one of the earliest and most influential explanations of gender roles within the family. As a functionalist, Parsons viewed society as a system of interconnected parts, each fulfilling a role to ensure the smooth functioning of society as a whole. From this perspective, the family plays a crucial role in maintaining social cohesion and reducing social conflict by performing vital functions for both individuals and society. Parsons argued that family roles are biologically determined, meaning they arise naturally from inherent biological differences between men and women. He identified two distinct roles that he believed were essential for the stability and harmony of family life. The instrumental role. Typically fulfilled by men, this role focuses on providing financial support, discipline, and overall leadership as the breadwinner. It is outward-facing, concerned with meeting the economic needs of the family and ensuring its survival. The expressive role. Typically assigned to women, this role emphasizes nurturing, emotional support, and managing the household. It is inward-facing, ensuring the emotional well-being of family members and fostering strong social bonds. Parsons saw this division of roles as not only natural, but also functional for society. He argued that it provided clear expectations for men and women, reducing potential conflict within the family. By assigning distinct roles, families could operate efficiently, ensuring children were socialized effectively, and the needs of all members were met. This in turn contributed to broader social stability. However, while Parsons' theory was influential, it has faced significant criticism. Many sociologists argue that his views oversimplify the complexity of family life and ignore the fact that gender roles are socially constructed rather than biologically determined. Critics also point out that his framework reinforces traditional gender inequalities and overlooks how families can adapt to changing social and economic conditions. Additionally, more modern sociologists point out that Parsons' idea of biologically determined roles ignored LGBTQAI+ families, where members do not follow traditional gender identities and yet successfully fulfill the functions of the family. Building on Parsons' view, Elizabeth Bott introduced a more nuanced understanding of family dynamics through her concept of conjugal roles, which refers to the specific responsibilities men and women take on within a marriage or partnership. Bott conducted interviews with married couples from 20 London families in the 1950s and determined that the degree of role separation was closely tied to the social networks and class of the family. In households with separate conjugal roles, men and women maintained distinct responsibilities. Men typically acted as breadwinners, focusing on paid work outside the home, while women managed domestic tasks such as cooking, cleaning, and childcare. Leisure activities were also segregated, with men and women pursuing different interests. Bott noted that these patterns were more common in the working class, where strong, dense social networks reinforced traditional gender roles. For example, men might spend their evenings at the pub with male friends, while women stayed home to handle household duties. In contrast, families with joint conjugal roles showed a more egalitarian approach. Here, men and women shared domestic responsibilities and childcare more equally, and leisure time was often spent together as a couple or family. Bott observed that this pattern was more typical in the middle class, where social networks were less dense, and individuals were exposed to a wider range of influences, such as educational opportunities. These factors encouraged a departure from traditional role divisions and supported greater equality within the household. By linking the division of roles to social class and the structure of social networks, Bott demonstrated that family roles are not solely biologically determined but are shaped by the cultural and social environment. Her work emphasized the importance of considering both external influences and internal family dynamics when studying the division of labor in households. While Elizabeth Bott's concept of conjugal roles was groundbreaking in highlighting the variation in family dynamics, it has faced significant criticism. Some argue that her division of roles into just two categories oversimplifies the diversity of family arrangements, failing to capture the complexity of how tasks are divided within and between households. Additionally, her research, conducted in mid-20th century Britain, has been criticized for cultural bias, as it may not fully account for the influence of ethnicity or global variations in family roles. Another critique is that even in families with joint conjugal roles, true equality is often not achieved. Studies, such as those by Anne Oakley, reveal that women still disproportionately bear the burden of domestic labor, even when men take on some responsibilities. Moreover, Bott's emphasis on social class may downplay the role of economic factors. In many households, women continue to shoulder more domestic tasks due to ingrained gender norms rather than a deliberate choice. Building on Bott's work, Wilmot and Young conducted a large-scale social survey to study families in London in the 1960s and 1970s. They conducted structured interviews with nearly 2,000 people to research the concept of the symmetrical family, which they defined as a family where both spouses contribute equally to household tasks and decision-making, with a focus on shared leisure time at home. Wilmot and Young approached their research from a functionalist viewpoint, seeing the family as evolving through stages, with the symmetrical family representing a more advanced stage where roles are more equal. Their research showed that this trend was most common among younger couples, middle-class families, and those living in urban areas where modern values and dual-income households were more prevalent. They referred to this as stratified diffusion, which suggests that these social changes, like the move towards a symmetrical family, start in higher social classes and gradually spread to lower classes. This led them to a perhaps surprising conclusion that they predicted that the next stage of the family would be the asymmetric family. They found that richer families spend more time apart and had more segregated roles, with wives not needing to work and men spending time on the golf course rather than at home. This prediction has clearly not turned out to be accurate, with, if anything, family life becoming more symmetrical since 1973. Wilmot and Young's theory of the symmetrical family has been influential in highlighting shifts towards greater equality in family roles, but it has faced significant criticism. While their research identified a trend towards shared domestic responsibilities, critics argue that it oversimplifies the reality of family life. Studies by Anne Oakley, for example, suggest that men's contributions to housework and childcare often remain minimal and are typically framed as helping rather than truly sharing the burden. Additionally, the theory has been criticized for assuming progress is inevitable and ignoring the persistence of traditional gender norms, especially in working class and culturally diverse families. Furthermore, their findings have been challenged by research conducted during COVID-19, which found that women took on a greater share of domestic labor and childcare as schools closed and homeworking increased, even in dual-income households. This evidence challenges the idea that equality in family roles is progressing consistently, highlighting how traditional gender norms resurface during crises. Now that we've looked at traditional roles and how they've evolved, let's dig into why these changes in the domestic division of labor have occurred. Over time, a mix of social, economic, and cultural changes has completely reshaped how families share tasks like cooking, cleaning, and childcare. But these shifts didn't happen overnight, and they're still unfolding today. Understanding what drives these changes can help us see why the roles within households aren't as rigid as they used to be. Firstly, one of the most significant drivers of change has been the increased participation of women in the workforce. In the past, many women were expected to remain at home and focus on domestic tasks, while men acted as breadwinners. However, as women gained greater access to education and employment opportunities, this traditional arrangement began to shift. Today, dual-income households are common, with many families relying on both partners to contribute financially. This economic change has challenged traditional roles, with both partners working outside the home. Domestic tasks like cooking, cleaning, and childcare often need to be shared to ensure the household runs smoothly. While this has led to progress, research shows that women still tend to do more domestic labor, especially tasks like cooking and cleaning, highlighting that economic equality doesn't always translate to full equality in the home. We also have to consider the shift in cultural attitudes toward gender roles, which have become much more fluid in recent decades, particularly among younger generations. Traditional expectations that men should work while women manage the home are being challenged, with many couples now aiming for a more equal division of labor. This shift has been supported by changing societal norms, greater awareness of gender equality, and the rise of movements advocating for shared parenting and domestic responsibilities. Younger generations, in particular, are more likely to see housework and childcare as a shared responsibility, which has contributed to the gradual erosion of rigid gender roles. However, traditional attitudes persist in some households, showing that cultural change is not universal. Advances in technology have revolutionized domestic life, making everyday chores quicker, easier, and less physically demanding. Modern appliances, like washing machines, dishwashers, and robot hoovers, have drastically reduced the time and effort needed for tasks that once consumed entire days. For example, washing clothes or cleaning the house used to require hours of manual labor, but now, with the press of a button, much of the work is done for us. Even more recently, the rise of smart devices and voice-activated technology, such as AI-powered virtual assistants like Alexa or Gemini, have reduced the need for specialist skills in household management. Tasks such as creating shopping lists, setting reminders, or even controlling appliances can now be done through simple voice commands, streamlining household organization and reducing the mental load. While these technological advancements have lightened the overall burden of domestic labor, they haven't eliminated inequalities in how tasks are divided. Studies show that women are still more likely to take on the responsibility of managing chores, even when technology makes the tasks themselves easier. Another key factor influencing the domestic division of labor is the commercialization of domestic tasks, where families pay for services like cleaning, meal delivery, and childcare to reduce the burden of household responsibilities. This trend has grown significantly, especially in dual-income households, where both partners are working and have less time for chores. With two incomes, many families now have the financial flexibility to afford these services, freeing up time for work, leisure, or family activities. For example, the UK cleaning industry alone contributed an estimated £59.8 billion to the economy in 2021, with continuous growth since 2010. Back then, there were around 46,000 cleaning companies, but by 2023, that number had risen to approximately 75,565 businesses, showing the increasing reliance on these services. While outsourcing domestic tasks has helped many families, it has also created new challenges. Women often take on the role of coordinating these services, such as booking cleaners or managing childcare schedules. This household manager role means that even when tasks are outsourced, women may still carry the mental burden of ensuring everything is organized. Additionally, access to these services isn't equal for all families. While dual-income, middle and upper-class households may benefit from outsourcing, working-class families may not have the resources to do so, leaving them to handle the bulk of domestic responsibilities themselves. This highlights how the commercialization of domestic labor can ease the physical burden, but doesn't necessarily solve the deeper issue of unequal labor division. Finally, the decline of extended family living arrangements has had a significant impact. In the past, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and other relatives often lived together or nearby, providing informal support with childcare and household tasks. This meant that the responsibilities of running a household were spread across multiple family members. Today, nuclear families, households made up of just parents and their children, are much more common, which means couples must manage domestic tasks on their own. Without the extra help from extended family, modern couples often have to work harder to balance work and home responsibilities. This has placed more pressure on families to cooperate and share tasks, although, as we've discussed, this doesn't always happen equally. Let's continue our discussion on families by exploring decision making and how it reflects the power dynamics within households. While we've seen changes in the domestic division of labor, decision making remains an area where traditional gender roles often persist. Sociologists have studied how decisions are made in families and uncovered clear patterns of inequality that connect to wider social structures. One of the key studies on family decision making comes from Stephen Edgell in 1980. He found that decision making within families follows a clear hierarchy. Men typically handle the most important decisions, those with long-term or significant financial consequences, like investments or buying a house. Women, on the other hand, are more likely to manage the everyday choices, such as what to cook for dinner or small household purchases. This division reflects traditional gender roles, with men's decisions often seen as more impactful or valuable, reinforcing their dominance in family structures. Building on this, Jan Pahl and Carolyn Vogler identified two common financial systems in families. The first is the allowance system, where one partner, usually the man, allocates a set budget to the other, typically the woman, for managing household expenses while keeping surplus income for personal use. This arrangement highlights clear inequalities in financial control. The second system is pooling, where couples share their income and have joint access to finances. While pooling suggests more equality, even in these arrangements, men often earn more and maintain greater influence over how money is spent. Further studies, such as those by Anne McIntosh and Michelle Barrett, reveal how men often benefit disproportionately from women's unpaid domestic labor. In situations where men provide financial allowances to women, they frequently retain control over major decisions, attaching conditions to the money they give. This system reinforces a power imbalance, as financial dependence limits women's autonomy and decision-making power. For low-income families, these inequalities can be even more pronounced. Research by Deborah Kempson shows that women often sacrifice their own needs to ensure the family is taken care of, going without essentials like food or clothing. This happens because money is often viewed as family money, but men in these contexts may still see it as their personal resource, exacerbating financial imbalances. There has been some progress in decision-making equality. According to Heather Laurie and Jonathan Gershony, by 1995, around 70% of couples reported having an equal say in decisions. However, this progress is often tied to women's economic independence. Women in higher earning positions are far more likely to report equality in decision making, showing that financial independence can empower women within families. Feminist sociologists argue that decision-making inequalities are deeply rooted in societal structures, such as patriarchy and traditional gender role socialization. These cultural expectations perpetuate power imbalances and reinforce male dominance, even in families that aim for equality. Feminists emphasize that these inequalities are not just personal issues, but reflect broader societal norms that undervalue women's contributions, both inside and outside the home. Bringing this into a modern context, decision-making in dual-income households is beginning to shift. While more couples now report sharing financial and domestic decisions, traditional patterns persist, especially in cases where men earn more. Even in families aiming for equality, societal expectations and ingrained norms often make it harder for women to achieve full parity in decision-making. Although there has been progress in some areas, such as more equal decision-making among younger couples and those with dual incomes, these patterns show that achieving full equality is still a work in progress. Decision-making within families continues to highlight the ways in which societal structures influence personal relationships. Let's now consider the extent to which power and roles in the family have truly changed. While we've seen significant progress in areas like the domestic division of labor and decision-making, sociologists point out that inequalities remain deeply embedded in many aspects of family life. Feminist sociologist Anne Oakley is one of the strongest critics of claims that families have become equal. She argues that men's contributions to housework and childcare are often tokenistic. For example, when men participate in tasks like taking the kids to the park or making dinner occasionally, this is framed as helping rather than sharing the responsibility equally. Oakley highlights that this mindset reinforces the idea that domestic labor is fundamentally a woman's role, even when men contribute in small ways. Building on this, McKee and Bell conducted research on unemployed men and found that even in these situations, where men might be expected to take on more domestic work, they often resist doing so. Their study highlights the persistence of traditional gender norms, where housework is still seen as women's work, regardless of who has more time available. Lynn Craig adds to this critique with her concept of the partnership penalty. She found that women in relationships, whether married or cohabiting, do significantly more housework than their male partners. Even in households where both partners work full-time, women tend to shoulder the majority of daily domestic tasks like cooking, cleaning, and laundry, while men are more likely to take on sporadic chores like DIY or mowing the lawn. This imbalance reflects societal attitudes that still undervalue women's contributions at home. However, not all the evidence points to stagnation. There are examples of genuine progress, particularly when traditional gender expectations are absent. Catherine Dunn, 1999, studied same-sex couples and found far greater equality in the division of domestic labor. Because these relationships lack the traditional gender roles seen in heterosexual families, tasks are more likely to be divided based on practical needs rather than societal expectations. This research suggests that gendered norms, rather than inherent differences, are the main barriers to equality. Similarly, Heather Laurie and Jonathan Gershoni found that families where women have higher earnings tend to report greater equality in decision-making and domestic roles. Economic power plays a significant role in shifting dynamics within the family, as it challenges the traditional idea that men should be the primary providers and decision-makers. These findings highlight the importance of financial independence in achieving equality at home. Despite these areas of progress, the reality in many heterosexual households still reflects significant inequalities. Men are more likely to handle occasional, less frequent tasks, such as DIY or gardening, while women take on the daily, repetitive chores like cooking and cleaning. This division of labor often leaves women with a heavier overall burden, both physically and mentally. Even when men contribute, the responsibility of managing and organizing household tasks, the mental load, still falls disproportionately on women. To wrap up, we've explored how power and roles in the family have evolved over time, driven by social, economic, and cultural shifts. While there has been significant progress, with more families moving toward equality in decision-making and domestic responsibilities, traditional norms still hold many households back. Studies show that women continue to carry a disproportionate share of the physical and mental load, particularly in heterosexual relationships, and that true equality often depends on factors like financial independence and the absence of traditional gender expectations. The family is a key institution in society, and the way roles and power are distributed within it reflects broader societal structures. Change is happening, but as we've seen, it's uneven and far from complete. As we think about the future, we need to consider how policies, education, and cultural attitudes can further support equality in family life.